The NBA draft was one of the more polarizing draft classes when it comes to the top of the draft. Many were wondering which of Anthony Edwards, Melo Ball, James Wiseman would go first overall, and everything in the lottery overall was just incredibly difficult to predict. So, looking back, how did those teams that were in the lottery do? And let's actually redraft what should have been, in my opinion, the top 11 players in that draft class. This channel right here is Amateur Hour Clips, part of the Amateur Hour Production Network, where it continues to be all Raptors all the time. On this channel, we take the best segments from the live streams that we do over on the main channel, Amateur Hour Sports, and clip it into some bite-sized segments for you to enjoy. So, if you do enjoy along the way, make sure you do hit that like button and subscribe to the channel as well to stay up to date on all the content we have coming your way. I only wanted to do a top 10 in this redraft. However, I felt as though 9, 10, and 11 were so close together that I didn't really want to leave a player completely off of the list. I thought it would have been harsh to have left any of these three guys off the list at all. I felt there was a bit of a gap between 11 and 12, but I made it a top 11 for the redraft. We're going to look at who should have gone in that position, not accounting for what the team who was drafting in that slot should have been looking for fit-wise. We're strictly going to go from a talent standpoint, who the top 11 should have been, and we'll actually take a look at what the team did with that draft pick, actually, and where the player ended up, and if it was a player who was maybe a little bit more slept on. So for starters, we go to pick number 11, and this is a player that I have come around to a pretty considerable degree with, and that is Isaiah Stewart. He has turned into a pretty interesting player this season. Coming into this year, I was pretty low on Beef Stew here. He's undersized position. His tenacity and energy kind of makes up for that. Sometimes the energy goes in the wrong places, but it makes up for it a little bit. But this season has improved defensively, even for a very bad Pistons team. And the big thing for his offensive game, he has really come on as a shooter. Is starting to shoot the three ball extremely efficiently. I believe he is in the 38% range for threes this season, which would be extraordinarily impressive considering the season before he was shooting about 32%. Just going to double check to verify as I'm going, shooting 38% from three this season, 48% now from the field, taking 3.83 attempts a game. Like, the fact that his spacing has improved to this degree is impressive overall. He ended up going in the 16th position in the draft, eventually traded to the Pistons from that draft pick, and the Pistons got to feel pretty good about this one. Isaiah Stewart fell a bit further in the draft than maybe he should have after, I think he was at Washington. They had a poor season. He fell a bit further than maybe he should have, but it feels as though it was kind of understandable when he ended up at 16th, and Pistons ended up doing quite well in getting this player out of the draft. In this redraft, he goes 11 to the Spurs. Let's go to pick number 10. Was really flip-flopping between Josh Green here in 10th and Isaiah Stewart, who went 11th. I decided to go with Josh Green in the superior position here, 10th overall to the Phoenix Suns. He would have been a pretty good fit over there. He actually went 18th in the draft, which, a solid pick overall from the Dallas Mavericks. They're getting more value than they probably should out of the 18th overall pick there, because this is a player that could have easily gone in the top 10, in my opinion. He is a good defender, and it's going to be back-to-back seasons here, likely, where he shoots above 40% from three on decent volume. Like, the value of a player who can play defense in the wing positions and shoot the three ball extremely effectively. I mean, everybody watching, if you know basketball, you recognize how valuable that is to a team. So getting Josh Green in the 10th spot, that's where I have him here, going to the Phoenix Suns, 8 positions higher than he was selected in actuality. Props to Josh Green. Has proven to be a really nice player alongside Luka Doncic, and the way he plays, he's going to build a very successful and lucrative NBA career. Going to pick number 9. This one's also quite close with the other two players, and I'm going to put Onyeka Okongwu in the 9th position. He actually went 6th overall to the Atlanta Hawks, so he's our first one that falls a little bit. Not too far, but 6 overall is just a little bit too high. That being said, I'm a big fan of Okongwu's game. I kind of feel like he's been a little bit disappointing this season. I was feeling like at the start of the season, this would be the year he would really kick on and take over that starting center position for this Atlanta Hawks team. As it is, Clint Capella still remains in that spot. again, felt as though this was the year he'd really start to kick on. I'm just admittedly a pretty big fan of Onyeka Okongwu's game, so that's probably why I feel like it's been a tiny bit of a letdown, because I just had some pretty large expectations for him. But he's a very efficient player on the inside, very athletic, good defender, good scorer, and can even space the floor just a little bit, taking just over 1 3-point attempt per game, shooting 33 or 34% or so in the process from that range. So, he's a good player. Going top 10 to redraft, there's nothing to sneeze at, but he does fall a little bit from his original draft position of 6th overall. Moving into the 8th position, this one was tough, guys. Definitely a bit of a gap from position 8 to position 9 in this redraft. I wanted to put him higher. I just could not really bring myself to do it. I got to be honest with myself, and the player that goes 8th here is Immanuel Quickley. Now, if you don't know, you're just watching this, I'm a Raptors fan, so it kind of stings that I have to put him 8th and not a little bit higher, but again, I had to be honest with myself. Hey, props to Quickley. He went 25th overall to the New York Knicks, and in the redraft here, well, the New York Knicks, even though that was a really good pick at 25, they can still get him here at 8. The New York Knicks had the 8th overall pick, and Immanuel Quickley ends up at 8. There's a lot of great qualities attributed to Immanuel Quickley. Is starting to take on a new role in Toronto as more of a premier ball handler, point guard, playmaker, rather than that kind of microwave scorer, I guess, in some capacity. Just a very good scorer with the New York Knicks, off-ball player. Very talented in doing so still, but adding in the ball handling load, I think, is going to help elevate this player's game. There is a lot to like about Immanuel Quickley's game. I just could not bring myself to put him above the likes of, well, for starters, Jaden McDaniels here. Jaden McDaniels ended up going to the Minnesota Timberwolves in the 28th position of this draft, and that was an extremely, extremely good pick. Now, ended up, I kind of forget, I get kind of lost looking back at all the trades that went down with draft day. Like, was it actually the Timberwolves that drafted him? But I'm pretty sure the Lakers actually drafted Jaden McDaniels and then ended up traded to the Thunder, then ended up traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I don't really know how it all shook down, but I'm pretty sure the Lakers actually drafted Jaden McDaniels to have him and then ended up trading him shortly after. Whatever way it was, I mean, this is one the Lakers definitely could have used. I know they did find a little bit. No, that was the year they did win the championship. So this has been a pretty good player to have for sure. But in our redraft here, he ends up with the Detroit Pistons in the 7th position. Now, why Jaden McDaniels goes ahead of Immanuel Quickley in this redraft? Well, as I said earlier in speaking about Josh Green, there very much is a desperate desire for really good defenders who can shoot the ball well. And Jaden McDaniels is an exceptional defender, like a very, very, very good wing defender. Like any contending team would want a player like Jaden McDaniels. The Minnesota Timberwolves have the best defense in the NBA. Rudy Gobert is the biggest reason why, but a very large reason why as well is the defensive play of Jaden McDaniels. Now, admittedly, his three-point percentage has dropped a little bit this season. Last season, it was right around 40%. This year, it's dropped to mid-30s, which is a little bit of a disappointment. However, a talented player who can score a little bit, provide you a bit of offense, brings that elite 3-and-D play, and still very young. I think that more top-tier teams go with Jaden McDaniels in a redraft rather than with Immanuel Quickley, and that's just kind of the sad situation if you are a Raptors fan and you really want to back Immanuel Quickley. I think more teams end up going with Jaden McDaniels, but I think you could kind of intertwine those two for that 7-8 selection. It was kind of tough to split them. But what was not difficult to kind of put above those two, a little bit of a jump here, is actually the number 6 position. That is Devin Vassell. Devin Vassell actually went 11th to the San Antonio Spurs, and a nice pick. And in this redraft, he goes 6th to the Atlanta Hawks. He goes a little bit under the radar because he plays in San Antonio, especially now with, that tall French guy taking over, Victor Wembanyama taking over a lot of the media attention there. But here's a quiet scoring assassin. Like, Devin Vassell is a smooth operator in mid-range, spaces the floor extremely well also. Just a number of different ways he can hurt you scoring-wise. And at 23 years old, like, he's already right at being a 20-point per game player, averaging just under that this season. It's hard to find that level of scoring and that level of scoring on an effective field goal percentage of 55%. Like, he's shooting 53% on twos this season, and he's shooting 38% on threes on just under 7 attempts, and he's done that for back-to-back seasons. He's sharpening up his game as a mid-range player and an interior player, and he has maintained those impressive levels from shooting on threes. This is a damn good player, and San Antonio, I mean, it's not strange for San Antonio to really nail a draft selection, but that is exactly what they did here with Devin Vassell in the 11th position. Ends up going top 6 in my redraft. Number 5 here, this one was easy to put at number 5, and that is Desmond Bane. Now, as a Raptors fan, this one stings. He went 30th overall to the Boston Celtics, was immediately traded to the Memphis Grizzlies, but the 30th overall pick was one selection behind where the Raptors were drafting this year. The Raptors go with Malachi Flynn, 29th overall. Stick around, you'll see where Malachi Flynn ends up in the redraft. No, he won't. He won't be. Well, he won't be in top 5. But Desmond Bane would have been a great pick for the Raptors. Didn't kind of fit the mold of where the Raptors typically go with the draft picks. Desmond Bane has short arms. He was one of the older players to come out of that draft class. So the Raptors go with a positional need in the point guard spot. But yeah, Desmond Bane would have been great. Everybody knows about Desmond Bane's game. He's been injured a lot this season, which has made life a little bit more difficult for the Grizzlies. And I guess maybe some people could start to forget about him a little bit. But Desmond Bane, one of the most elite three-point shooters in the NBA. Like a 40% three-point shooter. He'll take like 7, 8, 9 attempts per game as well. Gives him a ridiculous effective field goal percentage. A decent player on the inside. Is improving defensively. Like, here's a player who can be 21, 22 point per game scorer on one of the best teams in the NBA. At least he was last season, regular season-wise, that team. This is a very, very talented player, and what a move by the Grizzlies to get him with what was the 30th overall pick from the Boston Celtics. Very impressive work by the Grizzlies. In this redraft here, he ends up on the Cleveland Cavaliers, and my, good the Cleveland Cavaliers over the last few years. Could they have used a player who could space the floor like this rather than Isaac Okoro, who they took in this position? Man, what a miss on that draft pick. Going to the top 4 now, Tyrese Maxey went 21st to the Sixers, goes 4th in a redraft to the Chicago Bulls, and goodness gracious, because the Bulls use a player like this. At the time of the draft, there were some players I thought were absolute steals that ended up not being a steal, one of which was Denny Avdia, who won't end up on this top 11. However, one of the players that I established was an absolute steal in this draft class as well, that I was correct with, was Tyrese Maxey. Was surprised to see him fall all the way to 21st overall, and, I mean, he's showing why this season especially. Efficient player from 3, good playmaker, and an absolute demon scoring-wise. Averages 20 points per game last season. It's upped it to 26 points per game this season. Is likely going to be the recipient of the NBA's Most Improved Player Award. Maybe a little bit of questions about how the Sixers have fallen off so much in the absence of Joel Embiid. Like, so much they've fallen off. Like, they might be a play-in team. You know, kind of wonder, could Maxey have done anything to kind of steer that in a different direction a little bit more? But what a player. All-star this season and such a bright future ahead. He's going to get a rookie max contract this summer. Goes 4th overall here. Number 3 on the list, and I think this is the first one the player actually staged where they're drafted, and that is LaMelo Ball at number 3 to the Charlotte Hornets. Some question marks about perhaps how serious he takes the sport sometimes, but there's no denying what an immense talent this player is from a shooting standpoint, from a scoring standpoint, from a playmaking standpoint. Very good size for his position as well. There are so many great attributes associated with LaMelo Ball on court. Kind of a shame we don't really get the full sense of him with injuries and with the team he plays on. The Charlotte Hornets aren't that serious of an organization. You could argue that they aren't that serious because LaMelo Ball plays for them and he kind of brings that attitude. But when he's playing, he's getting 8 assists, he's getting 23 points per game, and he's getting a ton of threes up and hitting them mostly efficiently. On the inside, that level of efficiency does need to clean up, but from a talent standpoint, I really want to see him on a serious, good team one day to see what sort of level he can bring to that group. Number 2 on the list is Tyrese Haliburton. Actually went 12th overall to the Sacramento Kings, and it is insane that he fell that far. Should have been in the 7th, 8th overall pick range. The New York Knicks needed a point guard. They ended up going with Obi Toppin at 8. They absolutely, positively should have gone with Tyrese Haliburton. When the Sacramento Kings drafted him 12th overall, their draft room with their front office, they were literally jumping up and down, arms around each other like children when they realized Tyrese Haliburton had fallen to 12th overall, and we can see why. With how good of a player he is. So what did they do with him? They traded him. The Kings very rarely strike gold in the draft. They did. And very rarely they strike gold and have that player want to be there. They did that too. Then they traded him. And yes, the Kings have been good since that trade. Sabonis has been a great player for that team, but Tyrese Haliburton is a different level here. So I can't forgive them making that trade. That being said, what a player Tyrese Haliburton is. The ability, he's tapered off a little bit since the All-Star game, which he started and deservedly started, but he is one of the NBA's premier playmakers, maybe the premier playmaker, averaging 11 assists per game and only 2.4 turnovers. Extraordinary assist-to-turnover numbers at his age. Has been an all-star twice already in his career, and it seems as though he's only going to get better and better and better. Already an efficient shooter from 3, already an efficient player overall. What a talent the Indiana Pacers have on their hands, and what a talent to build around going forward. Number 1 in the draft was debating between Anthony Edwards and Tyrese Haliburton a little bit, but Ant does end up number 1, and he did go number 1 in this draft to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And the simple fact of the matter is, Anthony Edwards, extraordinary talent. We know that. His ability to score mid-20 points per game, the ability to do that while scoring efficiently, taking a high percentage number, taking a high volume opportunities from 3 as well. He's been an all-star twice as well. Will likely be pretty much guaranteed he'll be on an all-NBA team this season. But just what kind of separates Edwards from Haliburton to me, it's a term only NBA fans can kind of describe here. He's just got that it factor. He's got that superstar aura around him, and it's tough to find that. This is, to me, projecting. He's 22, 23 years old. This is projecting the player bona fide first option on a contender. Bona fide superstar, can get you a championship type of player. And Minnesota, man, I know they're looking really good this season. I still kind of wonder about the Gobert fit when it comes to the playoffs. It is an absolute shame that they had a player like this on their hands and sacrificed all of their trade assets to build around him by getting Rudy Gobert. They overpaid like crazy. The fit for Rudy Gobert, you can understand it. But the amount they gave up to trade for Gobert and not put other great talent around Anthony Edwards instead is mind-boggling. But what a talent Anthony Edwards is. He's got the it factor. He goes number 1 in the redraft. And you got to let me know who would go in your top 10 of the redraft. What would be your top 3 if you want to make it a little bit easier? What did I get wrong? What did I get right? These are tough to do, but give me all of your thoughts.